I am drawn to anti-heroes. Whenever I'm reading a book or watching a movie, I want the main character not to be too good, not to be too bad. I want them to inhabit that gray area between light and dark, good and bad. Morally ambiguous characters, which is a very hard thing to do considering that I write romantic comedies. Usually in romantic comedies, your characters have to be good and relatable and likable, but not so in film noir. You can get away with an anti-hero who succumbs to lust and greed, falls from grace, and even kills. What I'm saying is I'm drawn to stories with a healthy amount of vice, and film noir has vice in spades. It has hard-drinking, hard-boiled detectives, femme fatales who are dressed to kill, the criminal mastermind, all like slithering in the seedy, dark underbelly of a glimmering city like New York or Chicago or LA. I like to kind of revel in the darkness of humanity, slather it on me like mud and grime and grit. That's what we're going to talk about today in this cozy video about the disillusionment of the American dream, hard-drinking, hard-boiled detectives, femme fatales that lead them to their downfall, vice, greed, lust, murder, all the 7 deadly sins wrapped up in this neat little video with some fashion. My name is Teresa, and this is film noir. When I was 15 years old, I watched this 8-part, 8-hour documentary all about film noir. I recall watching it with a steaming cup of black coffee. You know, I've been drinking coffee ever since I was 8. It's not an exaggeration. I drank coffee when I was 8, and I took it black for some reason, and I'm completely fine. I'm really short. My growth is stunted. I felt like I needed some black coffee. I was a cynical child, much like the protagonist of film noir. Film noir, translated from the French, black film. It's a dark genre of film spanning from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It's a genre of film that is all about the vibes, all about the seedy surroundings, dim lighting, Venetian blinds, shadows, and smoke, slithering with anti-heroes, hard-boiled detectives, femme fatales, criminals. I have seen all the famous movies associated with film noir. Double Indemnity, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, costumes by Edith Head. We'll get into that later. I feel like I sound like I'm announcing some kind of Oscar nomination or something. Casablanca is put into the film noir genre because it has the look, the cinematography, the kind of world-weary, downtrodden main character played by Humphrey Bogart. Detour, Laura, Citizen Kane, The Postman, Always Rings Twice, and Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious. So the quintessential film noir movie set in black and white, black film, dim lighting. We have shadow, we have smoke. Most of the films were filmed with a very low budget. It's considered a B movie. So a lot of the times the crew would just go about on a shoestring budget, guerrilla film it around LA, around New York, on location. What resulted is beautiful cinematography. And I think it's because they had a very low budget and they had to make do with what they had. And what they had was shadows and light. You can do beautiful things with no money at all with just shadow and light. And sometimes with the location becomes a key feature. Film noir perfectly encapsulates a tiny slice of LA that doesn't exist anymore, but you can see the echoes of the ghosts of the 30s and 40s LA, crumbling Art Deco buildings, seedy motels, the dark places underneath the freeway pass, the piers in San Pedro, streetcars. There was the Angel's Flight, a freaking funicular. You know, in like Wes Anderson's Budapest Hotel, there was that funicular that exists in LA. Downtown area of LA was built upon all these hills, Bunker Hill, which was a location for a lot of the shoot, the deserts outside LA, the San Gabriel Mountains, the howling Santa Anas that come every fall, bringing with it madness, a howling madness. LA River, which is never full of water, it's full of trash. They were all places that some seedy, corrupt stuff could happen. I grew up next to the freeway and a gas refinery. My lungs are not in the best condition because of that, but you may think that sounds really ugly. Sometimes the oil refinery will let out this great, disgusting cloud of black smoke. But at the same time, it looks beautiful because there's the sunset, there's palm trees, the bougainvilleas growing alongside the concrete freeway, the dandelions growing in the cracks of the concrete. There's the smell of of honeysuckle. In Double Indemnity, the main character says, who knew that murder could smell like honeysuckle? So you have to love the glamour, and then the ugliness underneath the glamour. And the third layer is like Cherascuso. I don't know what just came out of my mouth here. Can you feel the passion? The detective is a cynical person. He doesn't have his life together. A huge change from the detectives of yore. Sherlock Holmes, cool, calm, collected. Philip Marlowe, he kind of has a drinking problem. He lives in a bachelor pad apartment. He has a 5 o'clock shadow. He's disillusioned. The main character embodies the disillusionment of the American dream, and sometimes he is led into danger, into trouble, usually by a beautiful, seductive femme fatale. And this is where the male gaze, it's undeniable, really comes in. Film noir detective novels created in the 30s and 40s came from a very male-oriented point of view, and they saw women with a male gaze. The female characters are a little one-dimensional. They're either a good girl, a Madonna character, or they're a femme fatale, a vixen, a diabolical man manipulator. So when I read The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, I never finished it. The plot was notoriously hard to follow. I have no idea what was going on in that book other than somebody was trying to get something somewhere. Apparently, the screenwriters and the actors and the director didn't even know what the hell was going on with the plot as well. They phoned Raymond Chandler and he didn't even know, but it's not really about the plot. It's about the vibes. The vibe, just vibe with it. The main character, Detective Phil Marlowe, he's in some 1920s mansion to investigate something. He meets this old man who likes to be in the greenhouse. He was like a reptile of a man. He likes to be heated in the greenhouse with his orchids, and his orchids were kind of like carnivorous orchids that he likes to feed flies to. And one of his daughter was just kind of like a nympho, like a coquette. She had very small, sharp teeth, and she had an extra thumb, which she liked to bite. She would kind of fall into his lap, Lolita-like. She had a harlequin voice. We gonna paint the town red, Mr. J. Her sister was a sultry woman, take no prisoners, biting one-liners. The 40s woman was like a strong woman. She had a strong figure. She had these huge shoulder pads, tiny little waist, and even though she's walking in a very tight pencil skirt with peep-toe pumps, she had a mission, she had ambition. She was Rosie the Riveter, and now Rosie the Riveter is dressed to kill. Let me just be as succinct as possible when describing the premise of Double Indemnity. We have an insurance salesman. He meets up with a very alluring wife of a cheap yet wealthy man. She convinces him to take out an insurance policy on her husband, which has a double indemnity clause. If he should die while on a train, then she gets double the money on his life insurance. So the two scheme to do away with her husband while on a train. The insurance salesman is led astray by Phyllis Dietrichson, led down a twisty, winding heart of darkness because of his lust for her. And here I would like to put on my public defender hat in defense of the femme fatale. The femme fatale is always the catalyst, the woman that leads the man, the main character, into corruption, into the heart of darkness, into committing homicide or insurance fraud, into jail. It always strikes me as strange that she would be the villain, because it's always a question of, does a man have a choice? Like, nobody could lead you into the heart of darkness unless you already have darkness within you. These main characters, the hard-boiled detective, the insurance salesman, they're not stupid. I mean, I guess they are kind of stupid. They're not like 13-year-old boys. They're grown men. They are capable of holding a job, and they're capable of making their own decisions. So if he is led astray and if he is led to committing crime, then I feel like it's out of his own stupidity. Nobody could make you do anything that you don't want to do. Let me just quote BioShock here. A man chooses, a slave obeys, and he's obviously not a slave unless you say that he's like a slave to his own lust, but that's his problem. Femme fatale has origins all the way back to Medusa, to the sirens in Greek mythology, and even to biblical times, to Adam and Eve, how Eve convinced Adam to take a bite of that apple, the forbidden fruit, and now they're both expelled from paradise and she's been vilified. It's all her fault. It's all women's fault. But is it? Is it really? He made his own choice in biting into the apple. He could have easily said no. One could argue she tempted him. She was in the nude, so tempting, but he was in the nude too. He was equally unclothed. He could have tempted her. He could have removed that fig leaf and she would have been hot to trot. So Mr. Neff in Double Indemnity, the insurance salesman, he's a perfectly grown-up, capable man. He chose to wear those pants that high. He chose to wear that short tie. He chose to go into her house and oogle her anklet. And he chose to call her baby all the time. That's right, baby. Like, what did she wear to tempt him so? Okay, let's just talk about this. When she's first introduced, she sees to her guests the insurance salesman in a towel, just wrapped in a towel. It's what she doesn't wear that is the most conspicuous of her wardrobe. In that time, in the 40s, that was very scandalous. It's kind of like a floozy move to receive your guests wrapped in a towel. I would argue, as her attorney, as her representing counsel, I'm not really a lawyer, don't take any law advice from me, but let's just say this all ended up in court. I'm putting up my public defender hat. We are defending Phyllis Dietrichson, the quintessential femme fatale. She's in her own home in a towel. At least she put on the towel. At least she didn't answer the door in her birthday suit. And let us not forget, this is her own home. She was probably sunbathing. She was probably in the middle of taking a shower when she had to answer this guy's unexpected visit. Was she trying to seduce him? The movie would suggest that she was, but I, as her attorney, would say, no, she wasn't. This is just her everyday routine. So there was a case in Chicago not too long ago. 2 apartment buildings, big wide windows. The neighbors complained this older man living across the way from them, he would walk around his apartment in his birthday suit. They paid a lot of money for this apartment. They want to see the view, and they don't want to see that view. This man amusing himself in his birthday suit because he knows that they're watching and he likes it. He's deranged. They wrote, please stop, on like a poster board so he could see, but he just kept doing it. And like the more they told him to stop, the more it egged him on. And he was just treating his body like an amusement park, you know, for their viewing pleasure. So they had to draw the blinds, and eventually it got to the point where they called the police. The police said that they couldn't do anything about it because, you know, legally he's in his own home. He could do what he wants. So what's my point here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? My point is that Phyllis Dietrichson is in her own home. She can wear whatever the hell she wants. You caught her unawares. And that's our story, and that's what we're sticking to. As she comes down the stairs, there is a very close pan to her shoes, pumps with pom-poms. It's meant to be a little tacky. Her character is supposed to be kind of like a gold digger. That's why she's in that god-awful blonde wig. Everybody knows it's a wig. It looks like a tacky wig. She married her husband for his money. She's the type of woman that if in the modern day, she would drape herself in head-to-toe designer labels, like aggressive designer labels, like a full dress with Balenciaga printed all over it. She's not in that old money, quiet luxury, stealth wealth category. But in the 40s, wearing a peep-toe pump with the pom-poms on it and like an anklet, it's meant to be a little tacky. That was considered the 40s version of a tramp stamp. That's my client. That's my client base. Mr. Neff, the insurance salesman, he is very drawn to that anklet. Like, he can't get it out of his mind. He likes it. He likes his women a little loose, if you know what I mean. And that's his problem. What she wears at home is her own business. A while ago, I got a comment from some guy. Who gives a crap what people wear? Does fashion matter? You could say it doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, are you gonna show up in a job interview, just roll out of bed with crusty food stains on your sweatshirt and expect to get the job? If you're a guy with one long pinky nail, all your nails are shorn, but you have one long pinky nail, I'm gonna make assumptions about you. You're a nose picker. I would think that he had a problem. What are you doing when you excuse yourself to go to the bathroom? Are you like, are you doing that? You're on trial for murder as a femme fatale with me as your fake public defender. I'm not going to advise you to show up in court wearing a full-on cheetah outfit because we want the judge and the jury to perceive you as innocent. I'm gonna have to ask you to wear a Peter Pan collar. I'm gonna have to ask you to wear a cardigan. I'm gonna have to ask you to take up knitting. If how you're dressed and how you're perceived and your actions can make the difference between finding you guilty or finding you innocent, then it makes a difference in real life. Who gives a crap what people wear? You know who gives a crap? I give a crap. Speaking of that, let's talk about Cheetah. Let's talk about the movie Sunset Boulevard. Now, this movie may not seem like a film noir movie, but it has all the elements of film noir. The main character is a screenwriter. He's basically writing scripts for peanuts, and he's disillusioned and cynical from his stint in Hollywood. He meets an older woman who happens to be an aging starlet. She was once a famous movie star in the silent movie era era in the 20s, but now it's 1950s and her star has fallen, but she's trying to make a comeback. And in this case, the costume designer Edith Head, who also did Double Indemnity, she dresses Norma Desmond in a mixture of modern 1950s and 1920s fashion, which was considered very dated in the 50s. Because the character of Norma Desmond is very much trying to cling on to her glory days in the silent movie era, to her youth. So she still hasn't given up all the attributes of the 20s, like her heyday, but she also is fashionable enough that she would adopt the modern styles of the 50s. And I liken her to the character of Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, where she's an aging woman and she's clinging on to her youth. She's still trying to dress like she's a teenager. She wants people to still see her as a young woman when she's far outlived her youth. I remember in the 90s, there was a lot of moms still rocking the 80s haircut and the 80s clothes, because that was like their glory days. Norma Desmond, I could definitely see her doing a lot of plastic surgery. Like, she'll go to the plastic surgeon and she'll tell the plastic surgeon, make me look like I'm 20. And the result would not be good. Plastic surgeons can do a lot of things, but they can't perform miracles and they can't really turn back time. I want the 20-year-old face on my 60-year-old face. It's not gonna work out. She should have aimed for like 40. She is dressed in cheetah, a cheetah swim loungewear, and the interior of her convertible is all in cheetah. And I feel like this is the first instance you really get the archetype of the cougar. Edith Head dresses Norma Desmond, who's basically like the main character's sugar mama. She's sugaring this younger man, kind of like using her money to lord over him, to control him. He doesn't like that. He likes the money, but he doesn't like to be under the power of this older woman. So in 1950, I feel like Edith Head has created the building block for the modern day cougar lady. There's this entire Reddit forum, men, younger men, who are really into cougars. They want to be hunted by these cougars. They're putting themselves out there as prey for these cougars. They want to go out into the bar and break some hips. Their words, not mine. There is this legend of a restaurant, now gone, notorious for being a hangout of the cougars. It's spoken of very highly in this cougar hunting forum. Like, I don't understand what it means to go out there and break some hips. Guys who are into cougars or want to be hunted by cougars, they position themselves as cubs for the cougars to sink her claws into him. They like get off on like the idea of breaking hips. What does that mean? Tell me what that means. But use family-friendly language in the comments below. At the end of Sunset Boulevard, the main character tries to leave her and she unalives him and he ends up face down in the pool. As her attorney, I think I have my work cut out for me. I'm very confident that I will win and get her off, because guys, the main character, William Holden's character, he is a grown man. He is not 11 years old. He is 30 years old. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow. He chose to be sugared by this woman, my client. He chose to be a kept man, and now he's blaming her for controlling him. My client is not in her right mind. She thinks she's 18 years old. She's pushing like 60. She thinks she's living in the 1920s. Instead of seeking mental help for this lady, the deceased, her butler, everybody around her, they enabled her in her delusions that she's still a star and living in the 20s and 18 years old. What they're really doing, parasiting off her money. He's using her, this woman, my client, who, let's not put too fine a point on it, is clinically insane. He lives in her home, he has an allowance, he eats her food, he gets free rent in LA, mind you, and he drives her car. Now he's angry that she's controlling him, but how can she control him? She's insane. So is she a femme fatale, or is she just a helpless victim? Is she the cougar or is she the prey? Guys, I hope you know that I'm just kidding, and I do indeed have ethics. Some ethics. I'm not trying to defend any degenerates out there. That flasher in the high rise, what he did was wrong. Off record, you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. If there is a shadow of a doubt, I will find it, or else loophole is not my middle name. I've convinced myself that I need to go to law school, maybe somewhere, you know, where it's easy to graduate. What kind of ethics do you need to pass the bar?